Everybody's looking for a hero. I am not a hero.
That was a part. I played the part. I'm not that man.
Hands down, he was Superman from day one.
I realized that if I could pull off this part, it would change my life.
John Houseman said, Mr. Reeve, it is very important to become a serious classical actor. Unless, of course, they offer you a load of money to do something else.
He convinced me when I first met him that he would fly.
I kind of like grew up with Superman. I loved the comics, and then obviously when the film came out, I was there on the opening weekend. I must have been like 12, 13 years old, and seeing it on the biggest screen in London with my parents. So I think I was definitely a Superman fan at the time, and that stayed with me. And in fact, the story was brought to both of us by a very enterprising archive producer who reached out to the family and established that there was a will to loan archive, the family archive, to a film if the right director was found, etc., etc. So, it came to us, and I think even if I was more the Superman fan than Ian, I think that we both immediately engaged with the story of Christopher Reeve because it's such a powerful story. And also because we had made our previous film was about the Paralympic movement. It's called Rising Phoenix on Netflix. And it was very much, introduced us as filmmakers to the world of disability. And that became a lens on the world of the Paralympics that just fascinated us, and we sort of like got very caught up in the human rights issues that many disabled people face in their daily lives, as well as the issues of how the Paralympics became a mainstream sporting event. So these things really drew us to Christopher's story. We actually saw archive of Christopher speaking at the Atlanta Paralympic Games in 1996, just after he'd had his accident, which really stuck in our minds. So when we came to tell this story, that disability lens was probably as important as the fact that he had played Superman. And we kind of thought that's an interesting proposition, that Superman, the idea of Superman, will draw audiences into the cinema or onto HBO Max, where it's going to be playing from the 7th of December. So you would come in via the IP of Superman, and how wonderful to be able to use some of those iconic moments from the Superman films in our film. But I think that from the beginning, we always saw the story of him waking up after his accident for the first time and realizing that the extent of his injury, and then discovering a reason to live, for his family, for the love of his wife, etc. And then discovering a purpose for his life, a new purpose for his life, galvanizing the scientific and medical community, working on behalf of people with disabilities across the globe, not just in the States. And we thought that was such an extraordinary story to tell. And also the fact that he'd wanted to show himself in public. He wanted people not to be afraid to look at someone with a bad disability. And he felt that no one was better placed to do that than himself, as former Superman. That story for us was the thing that really engaged us and that we really wanted to make the center of our film. First of all, it's very, very important to say that the Reeve family, with whom we had a wonderful relationship while we were making the film, but they never sought to say, you should do this or you should do that. They were completely, once we'd sort of discussed the broad parameters of what we wanted to do as filmmakers. They got out of our way, but they opened the doors to the family treasure, archive treasure, and they all agreed to sit for a day-long interview with each of them, um, and that was it. They saw the film about 2 weeks for the first time. This one 2 weeks before we picture locked. So they were never really involved in the actual filmmaking process, but as you say, they had sort of like opened we had this wonderful archive, and that archive came from many sources. It came from Christopher's home video camera. It also came from the fact that Matthew, who is a filmmaker himself, had spent 4 years documenting his dad's rehabilitation, and making 2 films, the second which was unfinished because Christopher died, the first of which is called Hope in Motion and was broadcast, and you can actually find it on YouTube. Wonderful stuff. But we had those 2 films, and we had all of the rushes, which were like, our office was literally filled floor to ceiling with these tapes that we went through, and the going through them, we had a small core team making this film, Ian and myself, and we had our assistant, our junior producer, our researcher, our archive team. We all went through it at our desks and logged it all, and then obviously Otto, our amazing editor, and his assistant, were also going through it. And so there was a sort of like a sense of, marshalling this material and really figuring out all of the magical moments that there were. But what really helped us in selecting them was the fact that we had a very strong idea of how we wanted the narrative structure to work. That we wanted to have that A story that I described, that Christopher's waking out of his coma after the accident to his death, on one hand, and then on the other hand, we wanted to be able to interweave that story with moments from his pre-accident life. That was the idea from the get-go, and once you have a strong sense of structure, you have gives you a roadmap, and you kind of know what you're looking for, and that really helps us when we're sifting through all the archive. Once you decide that you're going to take that approach, then it becomes very obvious that you're going to sort of like, you're going to get the 2 things everyone knows about Christopher Reeve, are that he played Superman and that he had a terrible accident. Get those things out the way as soon as you can, and then that leaves you the space to kind of peel the layers off the story and sort of like explore really who he was. And all the interviews, because this is these celebrities were not, they were friends. They were really close friends, and they were close friends in different areas of his life. Jeff Daniels was a theatre friend. Susan Sarandon was an advocacy friend. He didn't necessarily work. I'm just trying to think. I don't think he worked on screen with any of the people we have in the film, but they were all very, very, very close friends. He directed them. He directed Whoopi and Glenn, and so many lovely moments. And I think that moment that you allude to with Glenn talking about Robin, I think what we felt is that I'm not crazy about the hypothesis. How can you really tell, that Robin would still be around were it not for Chris? I mean, Robin had many other very special people in his life, and what happened to Robin was different to what happened to Chris. So I think you have to be very careful about that hypothesis. But why we eventually included it in the film was because I think that Glenn is speaking to the depth of their relationship and their feeling for each other, and the fact that Robin was bereft when Chris passed. So I think that was what was important about that particular line. But there were so many other just wonderful moments. I mean, I'll never forget those interviews. And there's stuff that's on the cutting room floor, that magical stories that Jeff told about taking a plane ride with Christopher piloting the plane, and just stuff that we don't have the space to include in the film. But yeah, many magical moments. The thing is, when you make a film, you're making it for yourself. And when I say yourself, I mean there's three of us in the edit. There's Otto Burnham, who I've already said, who this film would not be this film without his extraordinary artistry as an editor. So there's Otto, there's Ian, and there's myself. And we're the first three people. We're at the coalface, but we're also, when we play back and review sections of the film in the edit, we're the first audience. So, we have to feel stuff. If we're not feeling stuff, the film's not working. And we have to sort of like gauge when we're getting bored, or when we're, and we have to listen to the film and get a sense of what the film actually needs and what it doesn't need, importantly. And so when you put it in front of an audience, you know that it works for you. You're pretty sure, because you kind of like, you've watched the final cut and you've had all of those emotions passing through you. I mean, there were a lot of tears in our edit, and a lot of laughter as well. And, we were very deeply touched by the story. So, you then hope that because you've had that reaction to it, and you've designed the film to get that reaction in yourselves to it, you very much hope that that's what's going to happen when you have an audience. And, from the moment that we first premiered it at Sundance, it had not been shown in public before, it was clear that it was working as well for the audience as it did for us when we were in the edit. And that was the most amazing, satisfying feeling. And it's been replicated in screenings all over the world, and and during its release, and as you say, the wonderful reception to the film. So yeah, you cannot ask for more than that. You really can't. It's just the best feeling.
I felt I needed to do something, not just for myself, but for everyone else in the same condition.
The fact that Superman was in a wheelchair and was willing to go public with it was huge.
Help is on the way.
The Christopher and Dana Reeve Paralysis Act.
People are literally walking because of him.
What is a hero? My answer was that a hero is someone who commits a courageous action without considering the consequences. Now my definition is completely different. I think a hero is an ordinary individual who finds the strength to persevere and endure in spite of overwhelming obstacles. I wouldn't have missed this for the world.